We are rolling. We are rolling. I don't have my notes with me right now.
Okay.
Let me go get them.
Okay.
And so, you know, the first few times I did this, I didn't really go through the actual formalities of, you know, here's my guest and blah, blah, blah. You know, we kind of just...
Like the Carson show.
Dove right into it. So, but I'd like you to introduce yourself. And I'm going to just bring her up here with me.
Excellent.
Because she likes to be close. So you are Rob Mcmullin.
Yes.
And my neighbor. And do you want to start by telling us, everybody, about yourself a little bit?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rob Mcmullin, and I was born in 1963 in Queens. When I was about 4, my parents moved to Long Island. They bought a house for $20,000. It was a 4-bedroom Cape house. And I was one of 4 children. I have 2 brothers and a sister. I'm the youngest. And I went to college and graduated from Pace University in 1986. Prior to Pace, I went to Nassau Community College because when it was time to go to college, there was no money for me. So I worked full-time at the Marriott Hotel, which is about a mile from Nassau Community College. Nassau was $500 a semester, and I was making I was probably banking $600–700 a month working at the Marriott, which I was able to basically pay for my entire college education for those 2 years at the Marriott, and the summer before I started Pace, I worked at the Marriott full time, and I worked at a credit card processing company full time. So I was working 80 hours a week, and then I went to Nassau.
So that kind of negates my whole second question, which was, were your parents wealthy?
Well, I'll get to the parents in a second. So I started my career in 1986, and I worked on Wall Street. I've been working for Wall Street or a broker-dealer for 38 years. I'm married for 35 years, and I have 4 children. And growing up at kindergarten, I knew I would be graduating college. Not that I was so smart, I was a terrible student, but it was not an option. I knew I was going to college. I knew I would graduate because it was instilled into me. So all my brothers and sisters, we all graduated college. All my kids graduated college, which I'm super proud of them. My oldest daughter, Erin, has a PhD in biomedical engineering. Her twin sister, Danielle, has her master's in education. My daughter, Shannon's a scientist for Bristol Myers Squibb. And my son, Ryan, is going to law school at Seton Hall. And I left out the most important part of the equation is my wife, Linda. We've been married for 35 years. And she is the major reason we were able to save so much money. And we saved a boatload of money because we lived below our means. She had a big-time job at Prudential, and that's me.
Nice, nice. So you said that you worked on Wall Street and you work for a broker-dealer, you said?
Yes.
Right. But for everybody, including me, that doesn't know what that means, could you explain what a broker-dealer is?
Sure. So my first job, I worked for J.W. Seligman. It was a mutual fund company that was founded in like 1860 or something. And so they went out of business probably about 10, 15 years ago. But they were a high-quality firm. And basically, I worked for a mutual fund company, and a mutual fund is a collection of stocks or bonds that follow a philosophy. And from J&W Seligman, I went to Prudential. That's where I met Linda, got married, had kids, and from there I had a whole host of other jobs. Currently, I'm a CFO of a broker-dealer, Garden State Securities in New Jersey, working part-time. But I want to go back to where you're saying, did I grow up, you know, when my parents were
wealthy, right.
Yes, and they were not. And it was an interesting thing because both my parents worked, and, you know, coming up on 61 years, birthday card October 3rd, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'll get it.
They both worked full time. So back in the day, and, you know, when as soon as I could remember my mother was working, it was like 1968, most women didn't work. Like on our block, I think she was the only woman working. Everyone else were housewives. So that was unusual. And my mother worked for the state of New York, and my father worked for New York City. And my father rebuilt subways for New York City, and my mother was a counselor for New York State. So with
counselor
for she was
counselor like a lawyer, or counselor like a therapist?
She was a counselor for the state of New York for helping people get jobs. She worked in New York State employment. So when you lost your job, you would see her, and she would help place you in a job.
Got it.
So with 2 incomes and 4 kids, and our first house they bought for $20,000, you think we would be set.
Yeah, but $20,000 was a lot of money back then. You know, salaries were radically lower.
Of course,
of
course, but double income,
right?
$20,000 mortgage is not crazy,
right?
So you figure we would be middle class, upper middle class, and actually we were lower middle class with 2 incomes, because they must have amounted so much credit card debt, and they were paying probably 20 to 30% a year in this credit card debt, and it kept going up and up and up, that, you know, our electric got turned off more than once, our cable got turned off more than once. And, you know, as a little child, I scratched my head. Like, I couldn't figure it out. And I figured out later it had to be the credit card debt. But when my mother sold her house, the same house I grew up in, I lived in there till I was 23, from 4 to 23, she had a $300,000 mortgage on that house that they bought for $20,000.
Wow.
Because they were living above their means.
Got it.
And not that we were living large, we were not, but they were spending more than they were saving. And that resonated with me my whole life. Like, I couldn't understand that. So when me and Linda got married, we both made it a point that we were gonna save money.
Sure.
So
nice.
Yeah. So
that's smart.
Coming back to working on Garden State Securities that I'm doing now, I'm the CFO, working part-time, really, semi-retired. I just want to state, I don't have clients, and I don't offer financial advice. I will tonight, but it's my own thoughts. It's not like, I'm not a salesperson. I don't sell. I just work on my, you know, I love finance. I love Wall Street. Been doing it my whole life, and I invest my own money.
Right.
And that's the only money I invest. And if a neighbor asks for advice, I have given neighbors advice, but
yeah, right. And every time you give me advice, then you'll mention it, and I'll have to go Google what that meant again, because I forgot all the definitions, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of some of the stuff I want to touch on.
Okay.
But I want to also touch on that, you know, you do work for brokerage firms, or have worked for different types of brokerage firms or clearing houses or whatever. Yes. you were required to have the same kind of certificates as a stockbroker has,
Yeah.
but you never went into the sales route. You're on the back office side of it.
Correct. So yeah, so I have my Series 6, which allows me to sell mutual funds. And I have my Series 63, which is like a blue sky thing, which lets me sell in every state, which I don't. Then I got my Series 7, which I'm officially a stockbroker. And then I got my Series 27, which lets me file financials reports with FINRA for focus filings. And then I have my Series 55, which I'm really not even sure what that is for, but I took it, I passed it, and all my scores, like you need a 70 to pass. And I think my average score was like a 75. I studied just enough to pass and no more. So I'm very familiar with stocks, bonds, mutual funds, insurance. I've been dealing with this my whole life.
Gotcha. Right. So, I mean, I remember the off the cuff conversations that we have sometimes, and you'll talk about, selling a call or and like I said, then I got to go figure out, well, what does that mean again?
Yes.
Because number one, I don't do it all the time. I think I did it once.
Right.
Because
they're going to expire January, the third week of January, and we're going to sell more calls the third week of January in your account.
While I go turn those pizzas, because I have to make sure they don't burn, why don't you explain what that means a little bit? So now I'll have a recording of it.
Okay. So in 1986, 87, I was working for Seligman, and one of our investment advisors who probably went to Harvard, we had like super bright investment advisors at Seligman, was talking about yield, and he was buying stocks, which is like, IBM, Apple, Google, common stock, and he was talking about getting a higher yield than just the dividends, because stocks, not all stocks, but some stocks pay dividends. So I was like, how can you get a higher yield than the dividend? And he's like, by selling calls versus the stock. So the mutual fund would buy IBM, GE, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, but then would sell the calls versus the stock.
So what's a call?
A call is a contract saying you will sell this stock to the buyer at a specified price over a specified time. So it's a contract, and for instance, in my personal account, I'm short a bunch of calls, and I like to do the calls in an IRA account or IRA rollover because there's no taxes to it. Everything happens tax-free in an IRA, and then when I withdraw the money, which I have never done yet, that's when it becomes taxable. So I own Apple, and I bought 800 shares of Apple. So I currently sold 8 calls, which covers the 800 shares of Apple.
So it's $100, 100 shares per call?
Per call. So I sold 8 calls on the Apple at $3.10. So if Apple gets to $3.10,
so 310. Oh no, the price you're guaranteeing is 310.
So if Apple gets to $3.10 or higher by mid-January, whoever owns those calls can take my 800 shares of Apple at $3.10. If Apple never gets to $3.10, it's currently at, off the top of my head, I want to say like $2.22, and these calls expire in the third week of January. If the stock never reaches $3.10, the calls will expire worthless. I've gotten, let's say, $1,000 for selling these calls in my IRA, which I can now buy more stock with. And I buy things, And then in January, I will sell 8 more calls and buy more stock.
Sweet.
Yes. So your
Sweet.
annually calls are expiring in third week in January.
Right.
You sold them at 25 annually currently.
25? I thought I sold at 22.
No, they sold them at 25.
I sold at 25, okay.
And the annually is currently at like 20 and change. So they will expire worthless unless something dramatic happens in the market. Right. And then you will resell them again.
Right. And here's the trick though, right? So I'm very scared, right? So I still own that stock. Like some guys would maybe sell that stock, and then if they get called on those calls, then they have to find a way to buy them and sell them, and they could get hit with a big loss. Whereas I have the stock, so if I have to sell them at 22, I have them, I can sell them.
Yeah, at 25 though. But yeah.
Oh, at 25. Okay.
But, right. I only sell covered calls. I own the stock.
Covered is what I just described.
Right. I own the stock and I sell calls against it. If you sold naked calls, that's very dangerous because you sell a call saying Apple, you sell the calls at 310 and Apple goes to 700. You have to deliver the stock to whoever owns the call, and you're paying $700 a share,
right? And
you only got like $1,000,
right?
And so it's a very dangerous thing. So covered calls are very, very conservative. You have the stock, you pick a price that you would be happy to sell it at. If it hits that price, you sold it. If it doesn't hit that price,
you still own it, but you made money selling the call.
Right. So for instance,
before you continue,
go ahead.
So when I did that open mic that day, and I said, I'm going to do this podcast, it was all kind of a joke, right? Yes. But I said, we're going to call the podcast Pizza and Sodomy. So if you had naked calls, you could be open to some serious, crazy sodomy, right?
Yeah.
you could
just a disclaimer to anyone who watches this.
There's no sodomy happening here.
If anyone watches this, I had no idea the name of this podcast. Tom goes, Rob, you want to do a podcast? I want you to talk about stocks and bonds. And that's what I love to talk about. I'll talk to anyone till their ears fall off. But had I known it was pizza and sodomy, I would not be sitting here right now. So I hope.
But it's just a funny name.
I hope we change the name before this goes live to Pizza at Woodridge. But I'm not in control of that.
You got to have fun, right? So.
Oh, we're definitely having fun. And speaking of pizza, not sodomy, but the pizza, what are we having tonight?
So okay. So tonight's different than every other time I've done this.
Yes.
I've only done it a few times because I just started doing it. So every other night I made regular, you just stretch it and throw it in there like a regular pizza. And I didn't do like Neapolitan style pizza that would be like super high temperature and it cooks in 90 seconds. I did more like a New York style. So it cooked a little bit longer, but I wanted to make sure that it had a nice crispy crust, that kind of thing. But tonight we're doing deep dish. Now, I'm not going to say Chicago deep dish because we're not in Chicago, right? Yeah. But it's Chicago style. But you notice it is a Chicago oven.
There we go.
Yeah. So we're doing Chicago style deep dish. Now, here's the thing. One of them is going to be your traditional, cheese, sauce, sausage kind of thing, right? But the other one, so when Pizzaria Uno swung around here back in the 80s.
They're still around, by the way.
I know they're still around. Yeah, there's one right here on Route 3, yeah.
Yes.
But way back in the 80s, they had a more expanded menu, and they had an item called the Delico. And the Delico was a deep dish pizza, but it had some kind of scampi on top. It was shrimp and scallops, and I'm guessing imitation crab. And I decided I was going to recreate that, and I did it, and it was friggin' awesome. So we're going to have one of each tonight. We're going to see there's 2 pizzas in there.
Yes.
And as soon as they're done, we're going to let them cool a little. Now, also, I must apologize. I don't have a real Chicago pan, so I'm using like a false bottom pan, but it's easier to get the pizza out of that.
When it comes to food, I don't discriminate, so I'm good.
Oh, you're going to like this. I promise you're going to like this. So, well, here's a question. And I kind of know where you're going to go with this, but I really would love you to explain it. How is debt bad?
Well, debt, by definition, is not bad. Going back to my life where the lights were turned off and the cable stopped working, and we bought a house for $20,000 and had a $300,000 mortgage when my mother sold, and she still made money, but that was poor planning. And debt is not bad. I think most people, middle class, take out a mortgage to buy a house, and that's a good thing because real estate goes up. The house we bought in 1998 was roughly $210,000, and today we could probably sell it from anywhere from $730,000 to $800,000, depending on this crazy market. And interest rates are going to get cut, so the Fed will probably cut next week, and if they cut, that will make the real estate rise because the cost of the money is going down. So debt is not a bad thing. It's just you have to be responsible. And my parents didn't have that concept down, so they had a negative cash flow. So the opposite of a negative cash flow is a positive cash flow. And a positive cash flow is a very simple thing. You save money every month. Very simple. So someone starting out, like your son Tyler, in a year he'll have his master's and he'll have a job hopefully, and he'll start working for a company. If he's working for a company, my opinion, the best saving mechanism there is a 401k. And a 401k allows you to put money into mutual funds. And we explained mutual funds before. It's a diversified portfolio that invests in stocks or bonds and has an objective. So you can invest in mutual funds, and if he's working for a company, like my company, they give a 4% match. So with that 4% match, and usually you have to put in 5%, you can save 9% of your salary a year. And for someone just starting out with possibly college debt, or not a lot of equity in themselves, you start saving money, and like your son, he gets a raise, he gets a bonus, whatever, he can start increasing his contribution. So my company, if you put in 5% into the 401k, they give you 4%, which is like a 90% match, if you think about it.
Sure.
So I've been contributing to the 401k probably since 92. I graduated in 86, and the first year I contributed, but then when I went to Prudential, I was living in Manhattan, I had negative cash flow, so I wasn't contributing. But in 96, I started contributing, and I would say by 98, I was maximizing my 401k. And the current maximization is for 2024 is $23,000 if you're under 50, and if you're over 50, it's $30,500. And you can, if you're putting that much in, and your company is giving you 4% of your salary.
Well, 4% or 4% up to a certain amount you contribute.
4% of your salary. So
some companies do that. I don't think all companies do that.
Not all, but like my company.
That's nice.
If you put in 5% of your salary, they match 4%.
4% of your salary. Wow.
So, and they don't go any higher than 4%.
Right.
Some companies go higher.
Right.
But like, so since I'm semi-retired now, I'm just doing 5% to get the full match. But last year I put in 30,000, and they gave me 4%. And the year before I put in 30,000, they gave me 4%.
Sweet.
And that, you know, so I've been doing that probably since '98, fully maximizing my 401k. And my wife Linda probably started doing that probably around 2000. So that, you know, if I'm putting in back in '98 or 2000, we'll say $20,000, and she's putting in $20,000, that's 40 grand, and then 4% each is another big chunk of change.
Sure.
And the other thing that does is when you have a 401k that you put in, I put it in pre-tax, so that was lowering my tax
you're
bill.
doing pre-tax.
I believe in pre-tax because you pay less taxes that year. And if you ever watched the movie The Firm, if you can delay paying taxes even 1 year, it's worth doing. And I'm a big believer in paying as little tax as possible.
I gotcha. And I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm doing everything Roth because I'm concerned that when I start withdrawing, that if I'm not at a lower tax bracket, I'm going to have to pay a lot of tax on the money that I take out. But I have a mix.
Yeah,
I have a pretty big mix of pre-tax and
on your firm. You're doing a Roth with your firm, correct?
Right. That's right.
So they're match.
They are matching though,
and that goes into a pre-tax match.
That's right.
So I think the Roth is great.
Why don't you explain to everybody what a Roth is in case they don't know?
Okay, so I'm a pre-tax 401k person, which is you put your money in. So last year I put in 30,000 into my 401k. So if my salary was 100,000, the federal government would look at my salary and said it was 70, and they would tax me on 70%, roughly at a 20% tax rate. So I was paying 14,000 to the federal government. Had I done a Roth, I would have contributed the same amount of money, but they would have viewed my salary at 100,000. Instead of paying 14,000 in federal taxes, I would have paid 20,000 in federal taxes.
Right.
So I paid less taxes to the federal government. On the back end, when I take the money out, I'll be taxed. On a Roth, you don't get the tax benefit, but when you take the money out, you don't get taxed. So both work well. I personally like the tax benefit up front.
Sure.
Because under the current tax law, which can change, I don't have to touch my 401k now till 75.
Okay.
So it can grow. Like I'm 61, I'm planning on retiring at 65, basically for health benefits. And at 65, I can get Medicare. So I'm not planning on touching my 401k until I have to. Now, maybe at 65 and maybe at 66, but it possibly could be at 75.
Right.
So I'm totally invested in my 401k in stocks, in equities, because I'm not looking to touch the money this year, which I could, next year. I have possibly a 14-year window. And if my window is 14 years, equities is a place to be. Now, my non-401k IRA money, I have a lot of money in bonds. And bonds are currently paying the CDs. I just bought a CD today. It was 4.95%. Everything I'm invested in currently is about 5.5% or better. But as I said, the Fed is going to cut rates probably next week. Not guaranteed, but the market has built it in for a 25 basis point cut. And if that happens, your credit cards will stay the same, but your bank account, your savings accounts interest will be cut, your money market interest will be cut, and the mortgage rate, the going rate will be cut. So if you have a high mortgage, you can refinance at a lower rate if you took one out last year. So that it's going to help people if they cut rates. And it's just rolling right into an election year, which is good timing for the incumbents to cut rates just before the election.
So, question about you said you're not required to withdraw. What age are you required to withdraw from IRAs?
IRAs and 401ks,
They're different.
the same requirement.
The same requirement.
It depends when you were born. I'm not a tax expert. I'm not an IRA expert, but I was born in '63. I know I don't have to take any distributions till I'm 75.
Okay.
If you were born before '63, it might be 72. It might be 68, depending on your age. Talk to a tax person or a broker dealer.
Well, then when you reach that age, you're required to take a certain amount out.
Yeah,
right?
a required minimum distribution.
Got it.
And that is calculated. Again, you talk to a brokerage firm or a tax person, they can tell you what your required minimum distribution is. So at 75, they're going to look at all my IRAs and 401ks and my wife's IRAs and 401ks and come up with an amount, and then look at our timetable of how long we're supposed to live for, and they come up with a formula of how much money you must take out. And currently, the IRS has been very lenient. If you haven't taken out your required minimum distribution, they haven't penalized you. If you realize it and write them a letter saying, oh, I made a mistake and I'm going to take it this year, and they haven't really been going after you, but they can. It's a crazy rate. I think it's like a 10% penalty on what you should have taken, plus the tax on the money you should have taken. So, if you're in the 20% tax bracket and you're supposed to take out 20 grand, that's $4,000 that the government wants, plus a 10% penalty of the 20 grand. So 2 grand, they're going to hit you for 6 grand just because you made a mistake.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and they're not super vigilant right now because it's kind of new and people, they're being reasonable. But with me, when they move it to 75, at 76, if I miscalculated, I'm going to be paying a huge penalty.
Sure, certainly. So you said that 401k is the way to go. I'm going to get you one more.
Sure.
So now the question is, I have 2 Oktoberfests. I have a Brooklyn Octoberfest and I have a Sierra Nevada Oktoberfest.
So since I was born in Queens, I'm going to go Brooklyn Octoberfest.
I'll grab a Brooklyn. But what I'd like to ask you is, if someone's not working for a company, let's say they're going to, like my son is probably not going to work for a company, and he's going to get together with his friends and start a
business.
Right, they're going to start a recording studio. Right. And that'll be one of the things they do to make money, and probably some other things, right? So for someone who's doing that kind of thing where they're kind of independent, what would be a good investment strategy for them?
Well, again, I would do the IRA because you're paying less taxes to the government. I'm
going to grab that beer and I'll be right back.
And also there are other instruments that your son can use. If he starts a company and he can set up a 401k, or there are other investment options that are tax deferred, and that's the first step I would look to. But after that, after being tax deferred and you're saving as much as you can that way, I think the next thing to do is you talk about positive cash flow. And with positive cash flow, you're saving money. So we have a lot of investments, not in an IRA or 401k. We have it in just a regular brokerage account. And my biggest investment was Apple. It was 2011, and people were crushing Apple, and Apple was under $400 a share. So I called my wife and I said, Linda, we should buy Apple. It's under $400 a share in 2011. She's like, okay, how much do you want to buy? I'm like, I was thinking 200 shares. So at, $400 a share, that would be an investment of less than $80,000. And she's like, I'm not comfortable spending $80,000 on Apple. Let's just buy 100 shares. So, as I said before, my wife is one of the smartest people I know. And I said, sure. So we bought 100 shares of Apple at $390 a share. So we spent $39,000 in 2011 on Apple. I don't remember the year, but 4 or 5 years later, Apple splits.
Did you say 2011?
2011, I bought 100 shares of Apple.
So that was way after the iPhone came out.
Way after the iPhone.
Right.
And Apple, in 1996, was almost belly up. They almost went under. And they actually fired, it might be 95, 96, I think 90, 94, 95. They fired Steve Jobs, who was the founder.
Right.
And was brilliant. And after they fired him, Apple was in the toilet. I think you could have bought Apple in 1996 at $5 a share. And then Steve Jobs came back. And the first big product that Apple came up with was the iPad, the thing with the music.
Right. So that was not the iPad, or not the iPod. Yeah, it was some kind of pod.
Or the iPod,
right, where they did it was just the music and
right.
Right.
And from there, Apple took off. And at the time, I was working at Pershing, and one of the traders had Apple, and it was at $5 a share, and it going nowhere. Once the music, I think it's the iPod, took off, Apple went through the roof.
Right.
So I got in 2011, late in the game, or so I thought. So I bought 100. When I say me and my wife bought 100 shares.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to buy 200 to be on the record, but we bought 100, and it was at $395. So $39,500. 5 or 6 years later, Apple split 7 for 1. So I had 100 shares. Now I had 700 shares.
Right.
And then.
Right. And what happens with the split? Right now, the price comes down. It becomes more affordable for people. Right.
Exactly right. And then, probably 5 years later, Apple split again. 4 for 1. So on my 100 share purchase of Apple, I now have 2,800 shares. And in the interim, I bought on my own, me and my wife bought 300 shares. So now we have 3,100 shares. Those 3,100 shares, our course basis, we spent $395 for the initial investment. Our cost basis is now $22 a share, and Apple is selling for roughly $222 a share. So we are up, and we have other Apple and other venues, but we are up almost like $700,000 on Apple on pretty much one investment. And, so the values are worth like $900,000, and that was just one investment. So if you're young, buy a company like Apple like Tesla, like Google, like Amazon, and they may be yesterday news going forward, but you will always see the company that's up and coming, that has technology that no one else has. So the company I'm buying now, and I'm not saying, it could go to zero tomorrow, but the company I'm buying now is an AI company, NVIDIA.
NVIDIA. I've heard of NVIDIA.
And I have like 280 shares, but every time I sell calls and do whatever, I'm going to take that money and buy more NVIDIA and then sell more calls against the NVIDIA. And I'm picking a price much higher than where I bought it at. So if it gets called away, I win. If it doesn't get a call away, I sell more calls.
So you're talking about calls. So what is option optimization?
Well, that's basically in '86 when I was with Seligman, they were selling calls to up their yield.
Got it.
And that's what I'm doing. I own the stock. I sell the calls for much higher than I bought it for. And if the stock, if the calls reach that price, the stock reaches that price, they're going to sell it to me, but I'm picking a price I'd be happy to sell it at. And if they don't, I'm getting more money into my IRA to buy more stock.
Right.
So in my IRA, I have Annaly, Apple, Google, Amazon, NVIDIA, a company called TMC. I think that's everything. And all those stocks I've written covered calls against that generated for this year about $5,000 a premium, which is $5,000 where I can buy stock. None of the stocks have gotten called away. And if they all expire worthless, I'll keep rolling it. The Google is going to get called. The options are going to expire the third week in September. The Apple, the options are going to expire the third week of December. The Annaly, the NVIDIA, the Amazon are going to expire the third week of January. And again, I should be able to get another $5,000 writing those calls, and I'll buy more stock. And currently I'm buying NVIDIA, but that could change.
Nice. All right. So this is looking good.
Wow, that looks awesome.
Check it out.
That's
So
in Chicago.
That's the regular Chicago.
I'm very excited.
I'm going to pop that here for a second. And these are welder's gloves, but touching that pan with just a welder's glove is pretty intense. So I'm also using pot holders. This is the C Delico. Check that out.
That looks beautiful.
So I was supposed to put some parsley on top, and I forgot, but I think it's going to be fine. It smells good, right?
That smells fantastic.
Yeah. So just going to let that sit for a few, and then
So
we'll be cutting pizza.
Tom is also a stand-up comic. So I have a joke for the stand-up comic.
Oh, nice. Okay, tell me a joke.
So what's the difference between beer, this Brooklyn Brewery Octoberfest, and people?
I don't know, Rob.
I never met a beer I didn't like.
Oh, there you go.
Bum.
That's funny. Oh, my goodness. So here's something you mentioned to me earlier that I had no idea about. So when we get our paycheck,
Yes.
right? You work for a company, you're going to get W-2 income. There are several different taxes that come out of your paycheck, right? You got federal tax, you got state tax, you've got Medicare or something, right?
Yeah,
but then
FICA.
you pay into Social Security.
Yes, FICA.
Oh, so FICA is Social Security.
Yes.
I remember that commercial.
Yes.
The commercial.
Who's FICA?
Who's FICA? Right. So you pay into Social Security,
Yes.
and then your employer matches
Yes.
the amount. So whatever amount you paid, the employer matches that amount.
Roughly, I'm not an expert in FICA, but it's roughly 6.25% that you are paying in every pay.
6.25% of your paycheck, but up to a certain amount.
Yes.
Right. At some point in the year,
And again,
they'll stop.
Right. I think they keep raising. I think it's around 165,000 now.
Right.
It used to be like, 25 years ago, 70,000.
Right.
So they keep upping that, so people pay more taxes.
So my wife always, she's like, well, this is my bonus, right? But what do you think I'm going to get net? And I'm like, I don't know, so I'll just calculate 33%. I'll take away 33% of it. And I'll say, well, that's what your net's going to be. And I'm usually fairly close, right? But she's always like, holy fuck, I got this bonus and look at the net. Right. But then the other day she was like, I think they paid me too much. And I was like, and then she realized, oh no, I already paid all my social. Right. So they're not taking that anymore. She's like, they didn't take enough. Oh my God, now I'm gonna have to pay it again later. So yeah.
So a couple of interesting things. I know your wife switched jobs.
Right. Well, no. So she works for the same exact company.
Oh, okay.
But it's a new project.
Okay, that's
so
fine.
She was kind of,
I got you,
like what they call on the beach for a month.
Yes.
Right.
But if she switched jobs, right? Let's she worked for Company A.
Right.
And then in June she gets a better offer and she moves to Company B.
Right.
And let's say she makes $200,000 a year.
Okay, let's say.
And the cap on Social Security is $165.
Right.
Company A, she made $100,000 for, so they're taking out the maximum Social Security.
Right.
She goes to Company B.
They'll take
they got the max out, so she'll get the difference back because she capped out, but they won't realize it.
Right.
And the other,
she'll get it back later though when she does
the tax return.
Right.
And the other beautiful thing about Social Security is, I want to say 74, 75, it was not taxable.
1974, 1975. So
if you receive Social Security,
you pay into it through your whole life,
right,
having a job. But when you start receiving it,
it wasn't taxable.
Right, and now it is.
And depending on the state, it can be taxable on the federal level and the state level. And if you're under it,
so money money that was taken out of your paycheck as a tax
is also taxed.
Is then when you receive it taxed again.
If you make a certain amount of money. If you're on the poverty line, where the poverty line, let's say,
what is the poverty line?
Let's say $25,000, $30,000.
That's poverty. I thought poverty was higher. I thought poverty is like 40 grand.
I'm talking Social Security, and I'm not an expert.
Okay.
So if your net income with Social Security in total is like $25,000, there's no tax. But if you put a lot of money into your 401k, and you're at a certain age where you have to take your minimum distribution, and your minimum distribution will say is $60,000 plus your Social Security plus your other investments, you're paying tax on your Social Security, and depending what state you live in, you're paying tax to the state as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a money grab by the government.
And we're middle class.
Right.
Right. Like I know a lot of people are very, very upset about rich people and how they don't pay tax. And I hear everybody say all the time, well, Elon Musk doesn't pay any taxes. And that's bullshit. We know he pays taxes. Right. Anything that's W-2, he's paying taxes. And if you have a regular corporation, a C Corp, the C Corp actually pays taxes twice. Right? Because the corporation pays corporate taxes. And then they pay taxes. They share in the
shareholders get their either their salary or dividends, and they pay tax again.
Right. But people don't, like, they just, I don't know where they get the information from.
So I don't know anyone who's watching their political affiliation, and I really don't care. But when Donald Trump was president, he changed the tax code, and he helped a lot of people. But he really screwed.
Now, everyone will say he helped the rich.
No, but he helped a lot of people. But he screwed the blue states.
Uh-huh.
And New Jersey happens to be a blue state.
Right.
And I'm not pro-Democrat at all, but his tax changes, he did away with something which is called SALT, state and local tax.
Okay.
He capped it at 10 grand.
Right.
So
What does that mean?
If you're in Mississippi and you're paying $2,000 for your
Property tax?
And you're paying $7,000 on your state tax, that's $9,000. All that is tax deductible on your federal.
Right.
But in New Jersey, it's capped at $10,000.
Right.
So mine and your taxes are roughly $10,000 a year.
Property tax.
Property tax.
Right. But then you got the state tax.
So all the state tax we're paying being withheld from our paycheck used to be deductible on the federal.
Right.
But Trump took that away. He capped it at 10,000. And I think he did that to screw the blue states.
Because he moved to Florida. Right.
To screw the blue states who have higher taxes, like New York, Illinois, California, New Jersey.
Right.
So although his tax cut helped a lot of people, it didn't help people in New Jersey, New York,
but it didn't
Illinois.
hurt me as bad as it hurt people in Tenafly.
Why is that?
Well, because like you said, our property taxes here in this town are lower than their property taxes up there.
The higher the property tax, it's capped at 10 grand.
Right.
But before
the net of it all didn't hurt me for more than $1,000 or $2,000 a year.
Well,
right.
Whatever you paid in your state taxes, withholding for you and your wife.
Right.
Let's say it's 5%.
You couldn't deduct that from the federal.
So let's say you make 100 grand and your wife makes 100 grand, for easy math.
Sure.
That's 200 grand.
Right.
And you're paying 5% taxes to the state.
Right.
That's $10,000 that you could have deducted from your federal taxes
that we can't.
That you can't.
Right.
And then anything above that you're paying on your homeowner's taxes, you can't deduct that either.
Right.
So people are saying that they want to do away with the Trump tax cuts.
Right.
That would actually help people in New Jersey if they did away with it.
How am I going to do this? I think I could do it with these gloves.
But just on a personal note, Tom puts up all the things he cooks on LinkedIn and other websites. So on LinkedIn, I'm seeing all these beautiful things he makes. And in fairness, he does not share enough of this food. So he said, come on, do a podcast, which he didn't tell me the name of. And then he said, I will feed you. And I said, Tom, I'm there. But I was in Ohio on vacation 2 weeks ago, and he made some steak in his pizza oven, and I wasn't home, so my daughter Shannon benefited from the guilt I've been laying on him because, you know, I went to Catholic grammar school, high school, and I got my master's from St. Peter's, which is another Catholic school. So I have a lot of Catholic guilt going on.
I wonder if this is in frame.
If it's what?
Oh yeah, it is in frame. Nice. So they look pretty good, huh?
So what's the fish in this fish pizza?
So it's just shrimp. It's supposed to be scallops, but I couldn't get scallops at the store I went to. And then imitation crab. And what I did was
imitation crab.
Imitation crab for this is better than real crab.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It's got a better flavor for this type of application. So I sautéed the shrimp in garlic and butter, and then I just put it all on top. And of course, there's the layers of the cheese underneath, right? And you ever see the Jon Stewart thing?
No.
Jon Stewart's fucking. So, of course, I'm afraid of Mike Tyson and Chuck Liddell. Right? They can kick my ass. Of course they can.
Yeah.
But I fear Jon Stewart just as much. Like, if I had an interview with him, he would make me look like such an idiot. Like, you know, like, So Jon Stewart does this whole thing about how Chicago deep dish is really not pizza,
Right.
right? Because and he does. It's hilarious. It's really hilarious. He's like, they put the sauce atop the cheese. And the way he does, it's like his delivery is. See what I got now? I got all this shit on my hands. I have to go wash my hands. So I'm going to leave you alone for a minute,
Okay.
if you're okay with that.
Yes.
But I'm going to get a knife. And we've got.
Before you leave, though, did you ever downtown Manhattan go to Big Al's?
I've never been to Big Al's.
I don't know if they still exist because I left. I worked in Seligman from 1986 to 88. Big Al's was on one of these little side streets, and like, if you didn't know it was there, you didn't know it was there.
It was a pizza place?
It was a pizza place, and they made the best Chicago pizza.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm excited.
So, okay, so this is part of my goal, right? I am not allowed to turn the oven on in the house after March and before September because it heats the house up.
Sure.
And somebody gets mad. I'm not going to name names, right?
Later, but
Right.
We won't name names.
So I've been dying to have a way to do bread and things outside. So this bad boy right here, like I was going to just get one of those little uni pizza ovens, which would have been fine to make pizzas, right? But if you look at the opening here, I can fit my whole, and I've got video showing, I can fit my whole Dutch oven inside. So I cook all kinds of stuff in there. And, you know, of course it's designed for pizza because you see the nice big hearth, and like, even though you see no flame in the back, right? The floor of that oven, that hearth is still 300 degrees.
Wow.
Right? And that's going to retain that heat for quite a while.
Yes.
So I fell in love with this thing. Now, this company, Chicago, this stone piece here, they sell that as a kit. So if you've got a house in Tenafly or, you know, one of those nicer neighborhoods in New Jersey, you can have like a big stone thing built and have the guts put inside. But you see I got vinyl siding on the house. Like, you know, it doesn't. So this, to me, was perfect. And check this out, right? It's fully insulated. Like, you know, it was 500 degrees inside there, but it's not hot out. Like, I love this thing. Let me go wash my hands, get a knife, and we're going to serve up the pizza.
The thing about the pizza oven is, when you first bought it, I was like, it's so expensive. But you use your pizza oven, I would say, almost 5 days a week.
I do.
I don't see you in your hot tub ever. So
that's true.
The pizza oven was a better investment.
That's true.
So we're going to go on pause right here. If you could grab another beer after your hands are clean,
you got it.
Anything you have.
You got it. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to surprise you.
Guinness would be a surprise. So this is going to be some dead air.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. I watch this guy on YouTube all the time. His channel is the Wood-Fired Oven Chef. His name is Clive. He is fucking James Bond. I love this guy, right? And he does all this stuff in his wood-fired oven, and he explains things in such detail, and he's got great videos. But here's the thing that Clive never, ever... Hey, Lola. All right. Check this out.
What do we got? Blueberry. I love blueberry ale.
But that one is amazing. That's from Bahaba. What do you want to start with?
I want to go Chicago deep dish.
This one?
Yes.
So,
it's cooled down enough?
What's that?
It's cooled down
Yeah,
enough?
it's fine. It's fine. Let's see if I can. So I've been watching this guy on YouTube. Okay. His channel is the Wood Fired Oven Chef. His name is Clive, and the guy is friggin' James Bond. And he shows all these videos. Oh, check it out, man! Look at the cheese pull.
It looks beautiful.
Oh, I spilled some. I spilled some. Oh, I thought that was going to be you.
I can be me.
But one of the things Clive never shows anybody is that with these ovens, there is a level of soot that gets on everything that is unavoidable. I've got soot everywhere. Like if I touch like right here, like if I'm putting wood inside and my knuckles touch up there, soot everywhere. It's like friggin', so that raises questions about like Santa Claus. I don't understand how that all works, right? Like how, I mean, I know it's magic, but how does his suit stay red and white like that? Soot is wild.
This is fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. So
you should check out Woodstone in Rochelle Park. They have a wood oven, good pizza, great place.
This is my own recipe for the dough.
Very good.
This dough has, I think, probably 4 times the amount of butter that regular Chicago deep dish pizza has. That's not bad. So my goal
It's fantastic.
is to get better at all these different styles of pizza.
Yes.
I want to be able to make a good deep dish, a good New York style, a good thin crust, a good Neapolitan style, other styles. I want to be able to get good at all of them. And then, maybe one day when I retire. See, here's the thing, right? I know I would not survive in the restaurant business because of a few things. I don't understand the economy of the restaurant, right? Like, there's a certain amount of waste that you have to account for. There's a certain amount of, if you don't get the traffic, you throw shit away, all that stuff. I don't think I could survive working 16-hour days.
Right.
But, maybe in my retirement years, I could have a little place where I don't have to put in the 16-hour days, and we just have a small number of seats, and, and I'll offer every style, right? So whatever you want, we can make it. Now, but see, that's the problem, right? Like the trick is, like this is a different dough than Neapolitan, which is a different dough than New York. So you have to make all these different doughs, and if you don't sell them,
right, they go
garbage.
bad.
It's garbage.
If you're looking, that's your goal, to have a pizzeria where you make all these different types of pizzas and a small thing. I would recommend not owning it, but working there, saying like, listen, I'll come in 3 days a week. You pick the days,
Right.
And I'll make pizzas for minimum money, but I love to do it. And you'll pay me, and like that way, you make all these doughs up, and they don't sell. You don't care because you're getting paid.
Right.
And you would enjoy it just as much with none of the downside. Like you're losing $2,000 a month every month, and your wife's beating you up, saying like, you know, we're losing $30,000 this year on your hobby.
Right.
You work for someone.
Right. That's true.
You're getting paid. You're doing what you love.
That's true.
And you don't have to lay out anything.
I'm going to cut another piece. So, I don't know. Gotta try it. This is amazing.
I'm excited.
Well, you never had this, I bet, right?
I've never had it in my life. It's my first time, and I'm not even nervous.
But Uno used to have this on the menu. And I don't remember when they took it off the menu.
I never even heard of it.
The C Delico, they called it. I'll give you an extra shrimp. Just because.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, sir.
So what's interesting is, you know, everybody else that I've had over here so far, I said, well, what style of pizza? And they were like, you know, regular or, you know, whatever. My other guests on Wednesday night, they said thin crust, which I get it. You're the only one that said Chicago style, and I'm curious why.
I love Chicago style.
Okay.
I'm a big, as I said, I think it was Big Al's. It was on a side street by Liberty and Broadway. It was like almost in an alleyway. Fantastic pizza. I don't know if they're still there. It's been a long time. But they were fantastic. And I'm a big fan of Pizza Uno. I love their Chicago style pizza.
Gotcha.
This is godlike.
Now you just came back from that area.
Well, we were in Ohio. We didn't get to Chicago. I've never been to Illinois. My wife's on.
So what happened? Like because you said, you know, what's out? Where should I go out there? I haven't been out that way, right?
Right.
So where'd you wind up going?
So we went to Lake Erie in Ohio. We hit Michigan and Indiana. So my wife has I think 6 states to go to all 50. That's the goal.
Oh, okay.
But Ohio was better. Like my wife was saying, like we were talking about with my brothers and sister going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and she's like, Cleveland's like Camden, and Cleveland was much nicer. My wife was out there 40 years ago. Cleveland's much nicer than she remembered. But we went to Ohio. Lake Erie was fantastic, and then we one day took a trip to Put-in Bay Island,
Okay.
which is off like the Lake Sandusky.
Off of Sandusky, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a little island that's 2 miles by 4 miles.
I heard they had like wineries out there and everything.
Probably wineries, but we didn't go to any. There definitely was wineries, but you can rent golf carts. So you drive around a golf cart. So we had a golf for 8 hours at Put-in Bay Island. So we had a ball. So then we were looking up the stats on Put-in Bay Island. They have their own high school. They have.
I would imagine they have to, right? Because how are you going to get to high school otherwise?
Yeah, they have their own high school. From 7th to 12th grade, there are 30 people who go to high school from 7th to 12th grade, and they have 2 teachers for 7th to 12th grade. There's like probably 1,000 houses on Put-in Bay Island, but there's like, I think the population is like 130 or something. or 130 actual homes that actually live there, and the other 900 homes are just like second homes.
Got it. Got it. How do you feel about the C Delico?
Phenomenal.
Like the other one better?
I like the Delico
You do?
better. I've had pizza with shrimp scampi on it, like a thin crust, but this is
my own recipe for the dough.
This is like orgasmic.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, there's the sodomy. It's implied. How do you like that blueberry?
It's very good. I love blueberry beer.
You know what? So I'm still working on this Brooklyn. You might have to take. I didn't touch that yet. You might have to take some of mine, but because I got to drive. Well, not for a while yet. I got to go pick my wife up at the airport, but not for a while yet. This is good. So I think this is actually going to work out. So here's the problem, right? I have to convince Leia. You want some more of this or that?
Yes. Seafood.
Okay. I have to convince Leia.
Tom, there are no problems. There's only opportunities.
I have to convince her.
You have the opportunity to convince your wife
to let me do this. Right? So, and the real trick to it is, like we're in my house, right? So they can't just have anybody come over. But I'm hoping that I could do this maybe, once a week or once every 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And, because I think last night's conversation was great with Marklin. The night before, Gene and L'Oreal, maybe you could help with this. Gene and L'Oreal owned the Comedy Cove, the Comedy Cove in Spring
Lake?
No.
Springfield?
The one right here. Yeah, Springfield.
Okay.
Springfield, New Jersey. And that restaurant has been there since the 50s. L'Oreal's father owned it. And in 2007, there was a comedy club called Rascals in Orange, right? And they closed. And the guy from Rascals approached L'Oreal, and she's like, we can do some comedy upstairs. And they had an upstairs, right? So they're like, we'll do it for 6 months. As it turned out to be a good thing, and they were bringing a lot of traffic in. And the restaurant was a good happening restaurant. Like they always had things happening there, right? They had their biggest year in 2019. Then COVID happened. And Gene was like, yeah, then people figured out they could drink bourbon at home, right? Like that was it. Yeah. So I had been going to the Comedy Cove sometimes for the open mic, and I took a class there actually. That's where I took the class, was with that guy Chip. And now they just closed because they sold the place. But Gene and L'Oreal are looking for a place, like a restaurant or a bar, that has a upstairs room or a basement room or something near where they live or somewhere in between, that they can then dedicate to because they I guess they incorporated the Comedy Cove as their name.
Okay.
So they want to reopen the Comedy Cove just someplace else.
Right.
So if you know any restaurant that has a back room, or if you know anybody who knows a restaurant that has a back room where we can seat maybe 100 people, that's what they're looking for. And that's what they mentioned on that podcast. Yeah. I had a great time with them. Like they were fucking hilarious.
I know of a restaurant that has a back room. And I will give it to you off the air because I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I know one off the top of my head. But the thing is, are they willing to do that?
Right. So what they want, right, is the restaurant willing to do it?
Right.
They want to rent the space and dedicate it to. So the guy that I took the class from, he's actually doing that right now. His name is Chip. You can cut yourself a slice?
Yes.
Outstanding. You like that seafood?
It's really good.
Holy shit, man. I liked it. I didn't think you liked it that much. That's pretty fucking awesome. That makes me happy.
If
It really makes me happy when people like go back for more. I fucking love that.
I love Chicago style pizza, but this is something I've never had before. This is awesome.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, can you make spaghetti carbonara?
Oh my, did I talk to you about that?
No.
So, of all the pastas I've ever made or tried or had, I've tried to make carbonara at home.
Yes.
And I'm disgusted with the whole concept of, so I tried to make authentic carbonara and I hated it. The carbonara that I've had that I liked isn't authentic. And there's the rub.
Yes.
So I don't know what kind of carbonara you've had. Carbonara that I've had, I liked. But the carbonara that I found on YouTube, where they say it's the authentic carbonara, blah, 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 I thought it was horrible.
So, going back to my heritage, I grew up and I was told I was 100% Irish. My whole life, you're 100% Irish. I'm like, okay. And like, I didn't really think much about it. Okay. So my father passed away. And then years later, my uncle, his brother passed away. And it came out that his family was from Scotland, which I don't care, like Scotland, Ireland, whatever. It is what it is. And they migrated to Northern Ireland. So I'm at the wake of Larry Mcmullin, my uncle. I go to my mother, and I'm like, you know, my whole life I've been told I'm 100% Irish. And I find out that, you know, really my dad is Scottish. And she just looked at me and she goes, oh, I can't speak for your father, but I'm 100% Irish. And we're actually related. My mother is related to the Kennedys.
Really?
The Kennedys, yes.
So is Linda going to be pissed that she didn't have any of this?
No.
Okay.
She's out to dinner.
Okay.
So my mother's on the Cape, and she's talking to Marguerite Kennedy. And Marguerite, at the time, she's passed away, but at the time was probably 90 years old. And my mother goes, you know, Marguerite. And my mother was Marguerite, named after Marguerite Kennedy.
Oh, okay.
And her mom was a Kennedy. And she goes to Marguerite, are we related to the Kennedys? This 90-year-old woman takes a sip of her martini. And she goes, Marguerite, we are. But no one talks about it ever.
Why? That's fucking hilarious.
Because the Kennedys in Massachusetts were criminals.
Okay.
Like, the dad was a mobster.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. So, when John F. Kennedy was running for president, it wasn't out in the papers, but the mob was behind him.
Okay.
So they got him elected. So the first thing he does is he hires his brother Robert to break down the mob.
Jesus Christ.
And supposedly, one of the theories is the mob killed Kennedy.
Right.
We got you elected.
That's the theory, right?
Well, one of the theories. So I got another interesting story. So it's the 1960s. Kennedy was just elected. And the Packers have this quarterback, running back.
Green Bay Packers.
Green Bay Packers named Paul Hornung. he came from Notre Dame, and he was known as the Golden Boy. So it's like, I don't know, 1961, we'll say. And Paul Hornung is in Texas because he's in the reserves, the military reserves. So he comes in, it was a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And he goes to like the commanding person in charge, his sergeant or whoever. Listen, I know I'm here for the weekend, but I'm with the Green Bay Packers. I have a game on Sunday. Can I leave Saturday night? And the drill sergeant was like, boy, I own your ass till Sunday. If you try to leave Saturday night, you'll be AWOL and you'll be arrested and da da da. So Paul Hornung calls up Lombardi, who campaigned for Kennedy. You know, Italian American, Irish American, like he campaigned heavily for Kennedy. He calls up Lombardi and he's like, you know, Coach, they're not letting me leave Saturday night. I'm going to miss the game. Lombardi goes to Hornung. I know people. Pack your bags. So the commander-in-chief of this little rinky-dink, you know, Army Reserve gets a call from John F. Kennedy. He's like, you know, Sergeant Paul Hornung is needed in Green Bay. He must be flown out by Saturday. I am your commander-in-chief. So Hornung made the game.
That's fucking great. I wrote a joke for you, actually, during my first show. I was talking about me being average, right? And I'm like, and I don't care. And then I talked about apathy. And I'm like, I don't care about anything, right? I'm Mr. Apathy. I don't really care. Like, I don't like sports. I don't watch sports. But I'm nice to people. Like my neighbor, he's a Green Bay fan. And every year around the World Series, I always wish him luck. And only a few people got it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a cleverly constructed joke.
It's a good joke. But the Packers are playing around the World Series, so it's not.
No, that's my point, right?
Yeah.
World Series is baseball. I don't know the fucking difference between baseball and football. That was the point of the right.
Right.
Yeah.
This is godlike.
Awesome. I'll send you home with a slice. Are you going to want more? Because otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that in and bring out the pie.
I'm pretty good with what I've eaten.
All right. I don't want to, I don't want to piss you off or anything.
If you feed me, I'll never be pissed off.
So when I come back, I want to talk to you about a few more things. Well, I'll be right back. I'm going to go. Do you want a taste of both pies, or are you more interested in key lime or
Pecan?
Pecan? You don't care about the key lime?
No, I do not.
Really? But you never had a C Delico before.
No.
You've never had my key lime.
If you want to give me a slice of key lime,
I'll bring them both out.
Yeah, I'll have a slice.
All right. Because I don't understand that rationale, right? Like,
I have key lime pie before, and I'm not a big fan.
yeah, but you never had this key lime pie.
This is true.
I'll be right back. Lola, you stay here, please. So I'm going to pick this up and get it out of the way. But I'm going to leave the knife here because you know what'll happen. That knife will fall and go right through my foot. All right. Pecan, key lime. So I had Marklin over last night. So, you know, I'm not really quick on my feet, but sometimes I'm okay. So last night, Markland was here, right? The guy who wrote the book about racism. And I said to him, I'll take that. I said to him, but we're going to keep our forks. I made these pies and I used Paula Dean's recipe. And he was like,
shit, sorry.
That's fine. I'll get new forks.
There's just one. I'm good.
All right.
Sorry.
I used Paula Dean's recipe.
Lola, I dropped the fork. That means company's coming over. Mommy's coming home tonight.
You're not ready for it yet, are you?
What?
The dessert?
Sure.
You ready for it?
Sure.
All right. So this pecan pie. I was never a big fan of pecan pie.
I like pecan pie.
I was never a big fan. I always thought it was too sweet, you know.
It's very sweet.
And but my wife wanted to go to Charleston all this time, and we didn't make it out there. So I was like, well, I'll just bring a little Charleston home. And I went online and I found, the woman's name is Beth Mueller.
Okay.
And she posted this recipe on her website and on YouTube. And I tried it. And in my opinion, this is the best pecan pie I ever had. It's not super too sweet.
Now, did you make this yourself?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everything that you see here, I made.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's not my recipe. So this is Beth Mueller's recipe. And then the key lime is Claire SAFFITZ. She's a she's a culinary school graduate, but she's a
CIA culinary.
I don't know if she's CIA or not. I don't know where she went. But she's a New York Times writer, so she has a whole thing going on there. And I watched some of her videos. I was like, she knows what she's doing.
I got a good story for you. So I went to National Community College. So I'm taking an English class. And we have this teacher there teaching English, like English 101. And he was like, yeah. So I guess right after college, I wrote a play that was put on in Central Park. It's called Summer Stock. You know, they gave you like a month to write a play. I wrote a play. It was reviewed by the New York Times. And the guy from the New York Times pretty much destroyed the play, saying it sucked.
Oh.
And he like, you know, I wrote it in a month, you know, like, and in a month we had to, you know, get everyone up to speed, do the sets and everything. And then like, for Summer Stock, it wasn't a Broadway play. It did suck. But he goes, he was sitting next to my wife. And with my wife was my 2-year-old little boy. And he panned the play, but he was saying he was sitting next to this woman and child, who was my wife and my child. And he said like he was the most adorable 2-year-old he ever met in his life.
That's
so
funny.
He goes like, my son got reviewed by the New York Times.
That's funny. So
he was okay with the review.
So you use that word a lot, panned, and I didn't know what it meant.
Yes.
Panned. What does it mean? They reviewed it negatively?
Yeah, you put it down. You pan something.
Pan. I didn't know that word.
Well, we went to the Reinhardt's wedding when Amy got married up in Niagara Falls.
Oh, I didn't go to that one.
So one day we went to Fort Niagara and we went on a tour. And the guy gave us the definition of like 20 commonly used phrases, and he explained them. Like, for instance, do you ever hear the expression sideburns?
Yeah. Sideburns.
Yeah. Why does that word exist?
I think I know why. Back in the day when they used to use musket
Muskets,
rifles, it would, because the powder would just, and it would burn.
Right. So they would grow the hair over it because you couldn't shave it. And then like the expression dragging your butt.
That I don't know where it came from.
Same people, the people with the muskets, they would be marching, and eventually holding the rifle would get tired. Well, eventually
The butt of the rifle.
Butt of the rifle.
No shit.
Flash in the pan. You heard that expression?
I have. I don't know what.
It was the musket, and sometimes you would fire, and the pan where the gunpowder would just flash, but it wouldn't fire the musket. It was a flash in the pan. And there was like a whole, like 25, and he was just explaining it, and it was like one of the best tours I ever went on. Yeah. And he was explaining the expression shrapnel.
Your shrapnel, yeah. It's fragments of whatever.
Right.
Right. But where did it come from?
Either the guy was German or a Hessian soldier, and he would put little balls inside of a cannonball. And so when they fired, cannonball would hit, and then all this stuff would come out to create more
damage.
Right. And his name was shrapnel.
That's funny.
Pecan pie is very, very good.
Thank you, thank you. Not my recipe, but it's not hard to do either.
No.
I was really happy that it's not super sweet, right? And here's the other thing I found out. Like, those pecans are from the store here. But if you're ever in the South and you go to one of those little shops where they have like fresh stuff,
yeah,
and you get those pecans, it's even better. But, you know, I could buy them online, but they were expensive. You know what I mean? But we were down.
This is damn good.
I don't know where the hell. Oh, we were in Wilmington, North Carolina. And we went to one of those little shops, and I bought a whole bag of these pecans that were like local.
Yeah.
And it was even better. Like, this is good. Those were better.
Right.
You ready for that one?
Sure.
All right. So I want to talk to you about, you know, here's the funny thing. I think a lot of people just don't understand basic concepts. Like, and I had to Google it because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if it actually happened or not. So when they're talking about taxing unrealized capital gains, the first thing I thought of was, that's fucking crazy, right?
Yes.
But then I had to go verify, did she actually say that? And in fact, it was on Forbes that she did suggest it, but she suggested it only for people that have, you know, like over $100 million or something like that, right? So now, here's the thing that really makes me laugh. So whether you're for it or against it, if you hate rich people, you're like, well, it's only going to affect them.
Right.
Right? But it's a bad idea no matter what. And even though I can explain why it's a bad idea, I would like you to explain it, since that's your business.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to just go to anytime they create a new law. Do you remember, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, in New Jersey, they came up with the seatbelt law.
Right.
And they said, we will never pull anyone over for not wearing a seatbelt.
Right.
Well, we're just going to do it in case there's an accident or a speeding violation. If you're not wearing a seatbelt, you can get a ticket on top of that. a year after it got passed, they were pulling people over for not wearing seatbelts.
Sure.
So they lied to us.
Right.
So, I'm not rich. I would say I'm middle class, maybe upper middle class, but I'm
Well,
not rich.
according to Clinton, you're rich.
Yeah, well, I'm not rich.
You calling Clinton a liar?
Yes. But so like whenever they propose, Bernie Sanders or whoever proposes this tax on just rich people, I know. Let's say, if you make over $500,000 a year, we're gonna like double your taxes.
Right, right.
Sounds all well and good, but I know like within a year, it's going to go from 500,000 to 200,000,
Right.
and then from 200,000 to 75,000, and all of a sudden I'm rich.
Right, but here's my issue with that whole concept of picking a number,
Right.
is that the number is meaningless.
Right.
Right. The number is meaningless because so many things come into play. So, for example, the average cost of a house in the whole United States is some number, whatever it is.
Right.
But in New Jersey, it's way higher than that.
Yes.
Right now, our salaries are higher than that, but that's because the cost of living is higher than that.
Right.
But you can't compare us to the national average, which is different.
Right.
Right. So you can't just throw a hard fixed number out there, because there's so many things
Some
that
variables.
affect it. Yeah.
Yes.
That nobody can take into account.
So.
But go ahead.
So I don't think an unrealized tax is possible. For the simple reason is, what are you taxing? Are you taxing cars, real estate? Are you taxing investments? So if you buy a car and you spend $30,000 on your standard automobile, and the next year that $30,000 car is worth $20,000 book value, do you get a tax benefit? Oh no, only if your investments go up. All right. So your investments are worth $100,000, and next year they're worth $120,000. So you had a $20,000 gain, so that gets taxed. But what happens the following year? It's worth $80,000.
Right.
You went from $120,000 to $80,000. Now it's $40,000. Are you getting a tax refund? Like it'd be very complicated. And when you talk about taxes, I've always been under the Great Britain model. I think everyone should pay the same amount of tax. You make
a flat rate, right?
You make 50,000, and you say, let's say it's a 10% rate. You pay 5,000 in federal taxes.
Right.
You make 500,000, you pay $50,000 in taxes. You make 5 million, you pay 500,000. Everyone's paying the same rate, no deductions. And in England, they send you a postcard saying this is what you made, this is your taxes, refunds coming in 3 weeks. Please pay this within 3 weeks.
Right.
You don't have to fill. They know what you made.
Right.
Just like here.
But the issue then is, is it W-2 income or is it some other income, right?
Well, some people don't get W-2s.
That's right. They don't. But it doesn't matter if you're getting W-2 or not, because if you're taking money out of the investment, that's when you pay the. That's when you pay the tax, right?
Yes.
So, but I wonder, like, so when you have these CEOs that are making, $15 million a year.
Yes.
Are they taking it all as W-2, or are they also getting stock as part of the?
Probably both.
Right. So now the stock, even though they're getting the stock,
that's taxed though.
It is taxed.
It is taxed.
It is taxed.
Yes.
So all these people, they just talk out of their mouths. They don't fucking know what they're talking about.
What, the politicians?
And everybody else.
Yeah. No, yeah. If you get stock options, they're taxed.
stock options. But what
Well,
about if
so-
you just get stock?
Same difference.
Same difference. You're still going to get taxed.
Usually, corporations give stock options,
Right.
and what it is there's a vesting period saying
You're allowed to buy at this
we're
rate.
giving you 1,000 shares of Prudential, but it doesn't vest till 5 years from now. And if you leave before 5 years, you don't get it.
Right.
So they're kind of like locking you into staying.
Sure.
Then in 5 years, you have these options, and like, oh, your stock vested. We are gonna sell your options and buy the stock, and we can buy it at this price. And so you have 1,000 shares, but we're gonna sell off, let's say, whatever, 150 shares to pay for your taxes. Because
Right.
it's taxable
Uh-huh.
at the time you receive the stock. So they sell off some of the shares to pay the taxes.
Right.
Then the government gets their money.
Sure.
Yeah, but
So when people just say on social media, well, this guy doesn't pay any taxes, they're full of shit. Like, they don't even know. So here's the thing, right? Like, Trump wouldn't show his tax return.
Right.
Remember?
yes,
And my feeling was, if he did show his tax return, the layperson wouldn't understand it anyhow,
well,
because it's more complicated than mine.
the thing is when I heard Trump wouldn't show his tax return, I was thinking that he probably gives nothing to charity.
Oh, and he didn't want people to know that.
Yeah, so he would look like, you know,
I hadn't even thought of that. Okay.
that's my thought on it. That, like, he didn't want to show what he didn't give to charity.
Got it.
But yeah, whether there are loopholes that these guys get around not paying taxes, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. But from my understanding, everyone pays taxes.
And from your understanding, where you do this for a living.
yes.
Right.
So, and even if Trump has so many deductions where he's not paying taxes, he owns, like, let's say 17 companies. All those companies are paying taxes. So
Right,
even
that's right.
if he personally isn't paying taxes, but he owns 17 companies that are paying taxes, in essence, he's paying taxes.
So, if you wouldn't mind, just in case anybody didn't understand what unrealized capital gains are, could you explain it, like dumb it down a little bit?
Sure. So your house, your car, your 401k,
Take a little bit of that and just pour it in your glass before I start drinking it.
your 401k, your investment account.
Right, but hold on now. So my house, I
Right.
bought it like 20 years ago, right?
Yes.
Now, but the property tax has gone up.
Yeah. I'm not talking
Right.
about property tax.
So
Just talking about valuation. So let's say you
the
bought
property
your
tax
house.
is based on their assessment.
So let's say, yeah, but their assessment's meaningless.
Right.
So just say your house. Let's say you bought the house 20 years ago
Right.
at $300,000.
Right.
You could sell it today, fair market value, at $600,000.
Right.
Ballpark figure.
Yeah.
So you're up $300,000.
Right.
So one, you would need for someone to look at everyone's assets and see what their cost basis is versus what the current value is. So in a house, it's very arbitrary. Your house may be worth $600,000, but you can only sell it for $500 for
Right.
whatever reason.
Sure. And you might have spent so much money on repairs and enhancements
Right.
also.
So when you sell it and you get your $500,000, you have a $200,000 gain.
Right.
That's realized.
Right.
Now today, depending on what state you live in,
I'm just gonna
Yeah, go
get
ahead.
those lights to trigger.
you would pay taxes on that.
Right.
The unrealized is, who knows what your house is really worth, and who knows what you're going to sell it for, and what expenses you're going to have.
Right.
So, like, taxing unrealized is just a terrible, terrible idea,
Sure.
and it's going to screw over not only the super rich, but the middle class.
Everybody.
Well, if you don't have any assets,
Right.
like I think, and I could have this wrong, half the country doesn't pay any taxes.
How does that go? How does half the country not pay taxes?
Well, if you make less than
A certain amount.
a certain amount, if you're on welfare and other things that are not taxable, you don't pay any taxes. So
Got
half the country, that's what I've heard. I don't have the data on it, but I think that's accurate. So if half the country isn't paying taxes, it only affects the other half.
Right.
And I pay taxes, you pay taxes, we get screwed.
Yeah.
And you know,
But see, that's the other thing, right? So, look, I know that I'm going to pay X amount in taxes. I just know it's going to happen, right?
Yes.
So, what I would like to see, and I think this is how we vote, right? I would like to see the P&L and the balance sheet of where that money went,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
And we get a glossed over view of it. We don't really get the real numbers,
Right.
right? And then take, like, for example, we gave, over the course of a few years, we gave what, 700 billion to the Ukraine. Right. Now, I understand we have to give foreign aid. I get it. And that really wasn't a high percentage of everything.
Right.
But still, it's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
I'd like to see the P&L on that.
Absolutely.
I'd like to know where it was spent. Like, if you work for a company and you go on a business trip and you're going to submit your expenses, you have to detail those expenses or you're not going to get reimbursed.
Right.
Right? I would like to see the details of those expenses.
Absolutely.
Right? And we don't get that.
No.
Right.
Because also, I'm sure there's a lot of kickbacks going on. You said 700 billion to the Ukraine. The Ukraine gets that money,
right,
and they send something back to people who sent them the money for a kickback.
Sure.
Which
kickbacks as well. Right.
So,
but not just that, right? You know, if you look at the numbers here in this country, and this is so part of what I believe made a lot of people enamored. Like, a lot of people just hate Trump. But a lot of people love the idea of him running because he said the magic word. I mean, he said a lot of shit, right? Like diarrhea came out of his mouth, but he said the magic words. They were, we're going to put America first.
Yes.
Right? I get that. That's a very strong sentiment. So when you consider that there are 40 million people in this country that go hungry.
Yes.
Right? And I know that's a real number. Newark still has lead in the water, right? Yeah. Newark, New Jersey, right here, has fucking lead in the water.
Yes.
Right? Flint, Michigan still isn't fixed, but it's an acceptable amount. Right? An acceptable. We could have gold-plated the fucking pipes in Newark with $700 billion.
Yes.
Right? Gold-plated those fucking pipes.
Yes.
Right? Not just take away the fucking lead. Right? So, now I'm not saying we should gold-plate the pipes. What I'm saying is, there is just a gross mismanagement of our taxes.
Absolutely.
And I don't think anybody's going to fix that. I don't think Trump can fix it. I don't think the other one doesn't care about fixing it. She has her other agenda.
Right.
You know? And that's why I made that joke. I don't know if you heard my joke about, you remember what happened with GameStop?
Yes.
Right? So I'm saying we should GameStop the election.
Yes.
Because the Founding Fathers gave us the silver bullet, the write-in ballot. And they didn't know we were going to have the internet. All we have to do as a nation is agree on someone.
Yes.
That's not Trump and not Kamala. Someone who's an independent.
Yeah.
That's not beholden to the far left and the far right.
Right.
Someone who's independent, right?
Yes.
That we all believe is a stand-up straight, go-getter person, and we all just agree to vote for that person. And now, on election day, that person magically gets elected. But that could never, ever happen because we can't all come together and do it.
But even if it could, right? Let's say everyone writes in Elon
Wayne
Musk.
the Rock Johnson.
Wayne the Rock Johnson. Everyone writes in Wayne the Rock Johnson. Who elects the president?
The Electoral College.
Right.
But if the state is overwhelmingly with a certain person, and that's public, and they still do something else,
Right.
then there's an uprising.
Right. But
Right?
they can. The electoral college doesn't have to vote. The whole point was when they set up the country, they were like, if idiots vote for,
So that was your favorite. Okay.
if idiots vote for someone, the electoral college can change the vote.
You might want to use that. You got it.
So I don't know if everyone voted for Wayne Johnson, would he actually get elected? Because the electoral college wouldn't vote for him.
Right, but if the popular vote showed that he got more votes than both of the other candidates, then we got to say, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, I picked Wayne for a bunch of reasons, right? I mean, look, he came from humble beginnings. He got to where he is with hard work and dedication. I think he's a stand-up guy. He's very charismatic.
Yes.
He's very charming as well, right? So he's got both of those qualities. And let's face it, the president doesn't make all the decisions. They assemble a cabinet
Right.
to help them, right? But he is not beholden to the far left and the whole far right.
Right.
So all of those lobbyists that have all these favors, he doesn't owe them any of those fucking favors. So we're starting with a better level playing ground. At least we're starting with one.
Right.
Doesn't mean that's going to go anywhere. And some people say, well, I don't think actors should be presidents. Well, I don't know. I think Reagan was probably the best president we've had in my lifetime.
I go back to the movie Back to the Future.
Uh-huh.
When
oh, right. He's like, Ronald Reagan, the actor?
And then he goes, the next line after that, he's like, that makes a lot of sense because they're on TV now.
Uh-huh.
You want an actor.
Oh, my God, yes. So pecan over key lime. Okay.
Always.
Oh, I like them both. That's why I did them both. And it worked out perfect. I made them on Monday.
Have you ever made coconut custard pie?
I have never made coconut custard.
Yeah.
I love coconut custard
Me
pie.
too. That's my
But I've
favorite
never
pie.
made it. I have never made that. But again, these are neither one of these are my recipe. But that woman, everything I did from her website, her name is Beth Mueller. She's from the South. She is freaking, I did her butter beans, and they were amazing. That woman has some recipes.
Big fan of coconut custard. Big fan of banana cream. That's a hint, by the way.
I like banana cream. I haven't made either of those. You know what you would like, but you're never going to get it here? You got to go to the Philippines. They have a young coconut pie. And apparently there's a whole bunch of brands. And my father-in-law went into detail on this. And they like a brand called Letty. And I said, but I want to try the original. He said, that's not good. I said, yeah, but I don't know when I'm coming back. I want to try a bunch so I can experience it, right? And I believe you that Letty's the best. I believe you. But I want to try the other ones. And I got to tell you something. I tried a bunch of other ones, and he was fucking right. Letty was the best. But I had to try them,
Sure.
And the young coconut pie was created there as a substitute for American apple pie when people went there. And they don't. I guess they have apples there, but this young coconut was the thing. They call it buko.
Yeah.
And when you get it done right, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Some of the fruits I had. Now, here's what I wanted to do. I didn't do it. There's this fruit in the Philippines, well, in the tropical countries in Asia called durian. And durian has this very strong smell. I'm not going to say it's foul. Some people find it to be a foul odor, but others, like me, I find it to be very strong, but pleasant, but overwhelming.
Right.
Like if I were to open up a durian here, the whole block, like Harvey's house, would smell it.
Right.
You know?
Wow.
It's strong, like a skunk. but I found it to be delicious. I had it over there. My wife can't stand the smell. But what I wanted to do as part of the sodomy, right, was, oh, you're going to try durian tonight. And I'm sure that
Can you
I
get
would,
it?
I would have.
Can you get durian
Yeah,
here?
you can get it here.
Yeah.
You get it frozen, and then you would have to just thaw it out. Or sometimes you get it fresh in the season. You can get it fresh. I remember going to the Woory when they had it fresh, and I could smell, even though they didn't cut one, you could still smell it through the skin.
Wow.
So I had it there. I fucking loved it. Like I ate. I wound up going back every day and having a little more, and I finished the whole fucking thing. It's like a football. I loved it. My wife can't stand the smell. She won't even taste it.
Wow.
But so that was my thing, and I'm sure that somebody that I had over would have liked it, but most people would not,
Yeah.
because right, and that would have been part of the fun of the whole pizza and sodomy. Like, there's the sodomy part. You're gonna eat durian, right? But I didn't buy it because I knew that if that smell lingered just a little bit when she got home,
Yeah,
I'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
So, are you getting tired?
Nah.
Good, because we got time.
You ever hear Arlo Guthrie?
I have not.
Yeah. Arlo Guthrie is a folk rock singer from the 60s.
Okay.
His father was Woody Guthrie.
Okay.
And Woody Guthrie wrote, "This land is your land."
Oh, okay.
So Arlo Guthrie, his big hit was Alice's Restaurant.
Oh,
You know that song?
I don't know Alice's Restaurant. I know Tom's Diner, which is different.
Yeah. Alice's Restaurant is a 17-minute song, basically against the Vietnam War.
Uh-huh.
So at one point, at the end of the song, it's a live version, he's singing, and he's like going to the audience, "I want you to join in on the refrain." And they join in, and he's like, "That was terrible." He's like, "I've been singing this song for 17 minutes. He was. And he goes, "Then I can sing it for another 17 minutes. I'm not tired nor proud." And that's what you made me think of. I'm not tired. Are you tired? I'm not tired or
That's
proud.
funny. That's funny.
Yes.
So I wanted to bring up my other friend,
Okay.
our friend. She's good to look at, but she's hard to listen to. AOC.
Yes.
So, look, I know a lot of people say this guy's an idiot, that woman's an idiot, but they're not idiots. Because if they're idiots, they wouldn't be in the positions they're in. They're smart people. They just have wild ideas.
Yes.
And her idea was, if you're making $10 million, everything you make in excess of $10 million is going to get taxed at 70%.
Right.
And even though I've never made that much in my life, actually,
Right.
If by chance I did get lucky enough to make 10 million in a year, 11 million in a year, I'm going to get penalized.
Right.
Like you're going to punish me. Like, that's my view of it. Like, why are you punishing people? But a lot of people believe, like, they'll say, well, how much do you need? It's none of your fucking business how much I need.
Right.
Right.
I agree with you.
And I remember listening to this guy, this comedian, Ralphie May. He died, but in 2015 he did this masterclass, and he mentioned how he made $10 million one year, and he mentioned some other comedian that made like $20 million that year, and I'm thinking, like, so Ralphie May was born in poverty, but his comedy got him to the point where he was making $10 million a year. Like, that's the fucking American dream.
Yes.
Right? And now you're going to punish this fucker when he makes 11 million.
Yeah.
Really? Like, that's my view on it. But how do you feel about that?
Well, my view is, if you look at the tax rate and you go back to, like, I want to say the 50s.
Right.
Till now, do you think taxes have gone up or down?
Well, I kind of know that they went down. Right. I know that in the 50s they were way higher.
Yes. So when Ronald Reagan was an actor, he made so much money. I don't know what the amount was, but he, it was bracketed, but he was at the 90% tax bracket.
Wow.
So he made a movie just to pay his taxes.
That's fucking crazy.
It's crazy. So, like, I think everyone should pay their fair share. And, like, I'm agree with that, but I'm a flat tax guy. If you make $1 million, it's 10%, you pay 100,000.
Right.
If you make 10 million, you pay $1 million.
Right.
You make 10 grand, you pay $1,000.
Right.
Like, everyone pays the same rate, and no one is hurt by the graduated tax. And the graduated tax sounds nice to people who don't make a lot of money.
Right.
And the current state I'm in, I'm not going to be making a boatload of money anymore, which is fine. But I still believe that if I wanted to work, 80 hours a week, why should I be penalized for making money?
That's right.
And the other point is, me and you were at the age next year we could collect Social Security.
Right.
And I think that's great. But I think they capped Social Security, and I'm not a tax expert or whatever, but it's like $22,000.
Right.
And after $22,000, every $2 you make, they hold back $1 on Social Security. 22,000 30 years ago was decent money. Today, it's chump change.
Well, that's my point, right? You can't draw a line in the sand with a number.
Right.
Right? Because the number might be meaningful today,
Right.
and then it has no meaning tomorrow.
Right.
Right.
So that's like, if you really wanted to help the American people, I would say once you hit Social Security age of 62, anything you make above, you can continue to work, that doesn't hurt your Social Security. You want to collect a 62, you're going to get less than if you collect a 65. And if you collect at 67, and you get full Social Security.
Right.
Just for the people listening, if you collect a 62 or 67, the break even is 80. So if you start collecting at 62 and you have no other income, and you start collecting at 67, at 80, the person who started at 67 will be ahead of the game.
Got it.
So if you don't make 80, you should have collected at 62.
Right. Got it. So I was never a big Bernie Sanders fan.
I think he's a moron.
Well, hold on.
I do.
I don't believe he's a moron. I believe that he's got his ideas, but if he was a moron, he wouldn't have been in the position he was, right? Like, he's an intelligent person. He's just not. But here's what I want to say about Sanders. Even though I didn't I believe he was just, borderline communist.
I believe that as well.
Right. However, he did make a few suggestions that I think are better than the things we talked about here.
Okay.
So one of his suggestions were, and I don't remember what the number was, but on stock trades. Yeah. So what's the average volume of stocks on a given day? How many stocks do you think change hands every day? Like the NASDAQ volume?
A tremendous amount.
Right. Okay. So what he was suggesting is, and maybe it's 0.1%, maybe 0.1%, but let's say 0.1%. So we tax every trade by 0.1%. So you buy $1,000 worth of stock, you're paying $1. If you buy $100,000 worth of stock, you're paying $100, right?
Yeah.
But if the daily trades are like, 1 billion trades a day, that's a substantial amount of money that no one's going to sneeze about, really, unless you're a hedge fund where that 0.5% matters. But I don't know that hedge funds are really the best thing for the country anyhow. Right? So, and even if it was a smaller percentage, the idea is if you tax every trade, that dollar amount,
well, they do tax
small amount.
They do tax every trade.
They do.
It's called an SEC fee, and that's how the SEC gets money. Every trade has a small percentage that's taxed.
But that's the SEC. So where does that tax go?
to the SEC to regulate.
Right, but that's not a federal tax.
Yeah, but
Right.
the
But you see
reason,
what I'm saying,
right?
Like,
I understand what you're saying.
now it doesn't hurt because it's just like the graduated. It's just like the flat tax for income,
But the whole point is, if you buy IBM
right?
and eventually you sell IBM,
Right,
you have a gain or a loss
right.
that gets taxed.
That's true.
So the federal government is getting their taxes.
They are getting it.
So if you give them another tax, it's just like a gasoline tax. I'm against that as well. And like New Jersey's gasoline used to be cheap. It's not cheap anymore.
Right.
Because we're paying so much per gallon to New Jersey on a tax. Not to mention,
but it's more expensive in other states.
It used to be, New Jersey used to be the cheapest. People would come to...
It is, right. It's still, like, I know Tyler's in Philly. When he comes to New Jersey to get gas.
Right. But it's not as cheap as it used to be.
No, you're right.
Like, Long Island can be cheaper.
Right.
And, like, I think there's a Bergen County tax. Because the gas we pay up here is more expensive than Middletown, New Jersey.
Got it.
And it just... And they raise the tax on it, and then the Parkway and the Turnpike has huge tolls.
Oh my God!
And
so the Parkway, when they built it, the promise was that after it was built, the tolls were going to have paid for it, and there was going to be no more toll.
Right.
That never happened. The toll keeps going up.
Yes.
Like, what the fuck?
Same thing with the George Washington Bridge. I think in the 50s, the Catholic Church had the bishop appeal, and they said, like, it was a one-time thing, and they're asking everyone to give more to help out the Catholic Church. It was so successful. The next year, they changed it to the bishop annual appeal, and every year that they're collecting money, and it's like taxes. The more you get, the more they're gonna waste.
Yep, that's right.
Just like if you look at Woodridge, and I really like Woodridge, but we had Westmont.
Right.
And they built and built and built and built.
They're still building.
Our taxes haven't gone down, but their tax base has probably doubled.
Right.
And what are they doing with all the money?
Well, we need more cops because that part of town has
okay, we need more cops, but like our tax base has doubled.
Right.
How come?
Right.
Our taxes, I'm not saying they should be cut in half, but our taxes go up every year.
Right.
Not a lot.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
But like...
Did you get the letter about the Renaissance?
Yes. Yeah. But I'm like, it should be going down. If you're a business and you double your revenue, right? And you're making widgets. Right. And you went from, getting 50 cents net income a widget, now you're getting $1 a widget. You could lower the price.
You could.
And our taxes should go down. Should have gone down a little bit, but they haven't.
Right.
So something's
going on.
So something's not right.
We're gonna get to the bottom of that.
We'll never get to the bottom of it. And I'm not saying
I'm gonna have that guy on the podcast.
I'm not saying anyone's doing anything wrong.
No.
But like, it's simple math.
We just had the inflation we had after the energy crisis when Carter was in office, I think we just had one that was equivalent to that.
Oh yeah.
It was extreme.
Carter's still alive, and I think like he's happy with Joe Biden because now he's no longer the worst president in the history of America. Right?
The funny thing about it, though, like he really was a bad president.
Oh, a great person.
But yes, a great person, right?
So I have a Jimmy Carter story. My brother Paul is retired, but at one point he was in the Air Force. He was a lieutenant colonel out of Las Vegas. And a general calls him up and he's like, Lieutenant Colonel McMullin, what are you working on? And my brother lists like the 10 top projects he's working on, all high priority, have to be done. He's working overtime. And the general goes, "Oh, so you're saying you're pretty much free?" And my brother's like, yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir.
I'm pretty much free. He's like, well, we have this ex-president, President Jimmy Carter, and he's trying to build like 60 houses in Georgia for Habitat for Humanity.
Uh-huh.
And the shit is hitting the fan. And we don't want an ex-president looking that bad.
Uh-huh.
So we want you to fly to Georgia and manage these 60 houses and get
Bring the
them
Corps
built.
of Engineers.
And get them built.
Uh-huh.
And that, so, as my brother said to the general, yes, sir. And he helped out President Carter.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. You could have more.
I'm good.
All right.
It was excellent.
Thank you.
So,
I love doing this shit.
do you have any other questions or anything you want to talk about?
Questions? So I guess the only other question I could ask is, do you have any thoughts on well, I don't even know what I want. I mean, you know, it seems like we're in trouble, right? Like all the hungry people in the States,
Yes.
right? And all of the problems we have with drinking water in different places or polluted water, and that shit's not getting tackled, right? And I don't know that it's an answer. It's a question of whether we've got the money to do it or we've collected the tax revenues to do it. But how do you feel about all that stuff?
I think George Carlin summed it up best.
Okay.
When he was talking about homelessness.
Oh, they're not homeless. They're houseless.
No, he's talking about homelessness, and he's saying we're one of the richest countries in the world.
Right.
There's no reason that we have homelessness in this country. There's no reason for it. He goes, the only reason there is for it, because there's no money in it. If there was money to make in solving the homelessness crisis, it would be solved in a day.
Right.
Because someone would get rich off of it.
That's right.
But he goes, since there's no money in it, no one cares. No one's putting in the resources to solve it. And that's part of the problem. Like, I believe, like, unless you're disabled, mentally or physically, there should be no free lunch. If you need help because you have 6 kids and only one source of income, yeah, your kids should be taken care of, but you should have to give back. Just like Habitat for Humanity. You want a free house? Build 6. After you built the 6th, the 7th house they built for you.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So that's how I think it should be handled. If you know, I think you have to take care of the children, and the children, like where people aren't being fed. You know, schools in those areas should be open 7 days a week, 12 months a year,
meals for the kids.
and the kids can get food.
Right.
And it should be decent food. And I'm okay paying for that. But I'm not okay paying for people not to work. Everyone should, even whether it's a paying job or not, should add something to society if you're physically able and mentally able. Now, if you're physically disabled and you're mentally disabled, I think society should take care of you.
Right.
But I think there's too many people who are
Trying to game the system.
Game the system.
So talking about free lunch, what I want to suggest is, if anybody heard what you talked about and would like to contact you and get your help on, selling calls,
Yes.
Would you do it for lunch? Would you do it for a lunch?
I'm willing to help anyone if they come through you and you vet them and you say, oh yeah, this is a friend of mine, or this is a good guy. I'll sit
Yeah, but
down.
you should be compensated for your
But
time, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, it's just
I mean, there are people that do that for a living, where
yeah,
they'll
right.
give people advice, and they get
Yeah,
get
yeah.
paid for that.
But I'm not licensed that way.
Okay,
So like,
but you have all those
yeah,
licenses.
but I'm not like I'm not licensed to sell information to help people. So I will, like, if you have a question, I'm more
Right,
than
but you
happy
could
to.
tell them click here, click there, right? Click faster. Right?
So I'm willing to help people, but I can't do it for money.
Got it. Okay.
And
Well, I'm hoping that some of what you said is gonna stick.
resonate. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see. If someone wants to talk further,
And the thing
contact
is,
Tom and I'll get back to
but
you.
the thing is also, like, you know, I remember when the internet first started,
Yes,
right? And I heard commercials for the Motley Fool.
yes,
And you know, that was a great commercial. It's like, I'm a fool, right? Remember that commercial?
yes,
I'm a fool. And I bought the book and I read the book. And that was my first exposure to stocks.
yes.
Really. Like I write software, but I had no idea about how any of that works.
Right.
You know? And since I'm not able to, or don't even have the desire to, watch these things constantly, I'm of the mindset of trying to find things where I could just invest in the long term,
Right.
and not think about it every day,
Right.
right? And that's why mutual funds are better for me, or maybe
Yeah, I
index
agree.
funds, that kind of thing.
I agree. Mutual funds are better for people who don't want to look at specific stocks.
But on the other side, I do like stocks that pay a nice dividend,
Sure.
right? Because the bank's not going to give you 10% on your interest on your money, right?
Right.
You're going to get at best 5%, 4.5%. Like right now,
Right.
I can get a high yield 4.5% through Amex or something, right? But I can get a stock that pays based on the initial price, a 10% dividend, or even
Yeah.
better. But then I'm not sure if it's a quality stock and if it's going to sustain that level, right? Or maybe
Right.
the stock's going to go belly up, and then I lost my investment, in searching for the dividend, right? So
Right.
it's that kind of thing, right? I think people need to understand how to read a balance sheet and read a P&L at least, so they have an idea of if the company's okay or not.
The
And
thing,
even then, it's not a safe bet sometimes.
right. The thing with stocks is there's. I think it was Peter Drucker said the only constant is change, and that goes really well with the stock market. For instance, back in the day, Nokia was the leader in cell phones.
Cell phones, that's right.
And I was working, it was in like the 2000s, and they were paying this ridiculous dividend. And this broker was going to me, yeah, they pay this great dividend, like you can't lose. I'm like, all right. So I bought like a couple hundred shares of Nokia. It wasn't a lot of money. And the stock just went down the tank because they were yesterday's technology. Apple ate their lunch.
Right.
And he was seeing the dividend, and I was taking him as a trusted source. So I bought the stock, but it wasn't, no one was buying Nokia.
Right.
It was like in Europe, but like once Apple moved on to Europe,
that's it.
Yeah. So Nokia, I think, still exists. I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, the stock tanked.
Right.
And their dividend went away.
Got it.
So, as Jeff Bezos says, Amazon one day will go away. Like something's going to come up with a better Amazon, and will take, it will just fade away. And the question is when.
Right.
And Amazon may be the greatest stock for the next 100 years. And like most people don't live 100 years, so it might be a great investment. But 100 years from now, it may not be a great investment. So I would look for a stock or stocks that have the technology that everyone's talking about,
Right.
like NVIDIA, Apple, Tesla.
Well, they're all in this AI space now, right?
And 5 years from now, they may not be, but right now they're the stocks to buy.
Right,
And who knows what the stock to buy is tomorrow.
right.
It could be anything.
I gotcha. Oh, you want to wrap it up?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, hey, it was
Tom,
fun having you here.
oh, the food is fantastic.
Thank you. I'm gonna shut the camera off, and I just gotta bring this shit inside. That's it.
So, on a personal note, after you shut the camera off,
After, okay. Oh, I wasn't recording. I am apathetic about sports. My next door neighbor is a diehard Green Bay fan. I don't care. You know, every year around this time when the World Series happens, I always wish it luck. You know, I just gotta